We do have breaking news out of Ukraine. The country's Air Force says that Russia is launching a ballistic missile attack tonight on Kyiv. This follows a drone strike on Kharkiv yesterday. Even so, both the U.S. and Ukraine say progress is being made on a plan to end the war. President Trump says that something good may be happening following intensive talks in Geneva over the weekend between U.S. and Ukrainian officials. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called meetings productive and meaningful, and Ukrainian President Zelensky is now striking a more optimistic tone.
Дипломатія активізована – це добре.
Diplomacy has been activated, which is good, very good. We expect that the results will be the right steps. The first priority is reliable peace, guaranteed security, respect for our people, respect for everyone who gave their lives defending Ukraine from Russian aggression.
Negotiators are working off the 28-point ceasefire plan that President Trump presented last week, which calls for Ukraine to give up territory, reduce the size of its military, and promise not to join NATO, demands that Russia has made all along. That plan is now being modified, but Vladimir Putin may nix any agreement, and President Trump's initial demand that Ukraine agree to a plan by this Thursday now appears flexible. So there is a lot in flux and much to discuss with Brett McGurk, CNN global affairs analyst who has served in senior positions under the last four presidents, including President Trump. Brett, always great to see you. Look, you've been on the inside, now from the outside. Can you tell where things are headed? Is this moving away from that very pro-Russia 28-point document?
Yeah, John, I spent some time at that Intercontinental Hotel in Geneva where a lot of deals, many times in secret, are done. I was struck by the room there. You had about 10 people on each side. It's kind of hard to get things done with that group. But look, it looks like there was some progress made. You know, over the weekend, John, this is what makes foreign policy both so interesting and so complicated. It's not just the president. He has primary authority in foreign affairs, but there are other actors, particularly here. And if you even go through that 28-point plan that came out last week, there's a role, John, for Congress because it calls for lifting sanctions on Russia. Those are congressionally mandated sanctions. You can't do that without Congress. There's a role for Europe. It talks about using frozen funds that are in Europe. Europe has a say in that. There's a role for NATO. NATO has a say, and of course, Ukraine has a say. So what you saw over the weekend was all these other actors get involved and say, hey, wait a minute, we need some changes to this plan. And then you had the U.S. side meet with the Ukrainians, and from what we are hearing, the plan is now significantly revised. Whether this can stop this horrific war that we all want stopped, that remains to be seen. And you can see again, John, Russia tonight launching another missile and drone attack all across Ukraine, which looks to be ongoing.
You talk about people coming from different places in this not being a binary discussion. What about people coming from different places even within the U.S. administration? Does it feel to you, like many are writing, that Secretary of State Rubio may have been in a fundamentally different place than Steve Witkoff was, who was playing point on this 28-point plan?
You know, it seems like that, which is not totally abnormal when you have a complicated negotiation like this. But I was struck by one of the readouts from the U.S. side yesterday said the first part of the day was focused on coordination meetings, unilateral meetings. That's a fancy way of saying we were meeting with ourselves within the U.S. team to get on the same page. That's never a great sign. You don't really want that out in the public, especially when you're negotiating with the Russians. I mean, the Russians will try to split any division in an administration. You want to be speaking from the same voice. Look, I'm hopeful, John. We all want this war to stop. I'm hopeful what came out of the meetings yesterday. We just heard Zelensky there. You're starting to maybe get something that we can get behind and then present to the Russians. And an important call today also, John, President Trump spoke with Xi Jinping. The readout of that call on both sides said they spoke about Ukraine. And look, China is supporting Russia in this war. Iran is supporting Russia in this war. That's one thing that makes this so important. And I would hope the president with Xi Jinping says, hey, work with me here, help me out with some pressure on Putin to wind this war down. I doubt he said that, but that's what you should say in that call if you want to get this war wound down. You need more pressure on Moscow.
Some of the startling things in the 28-point plan included a significant cut to Ukraine's military, a handover of a significant amount of territory that Russia has not even conquered yet, and of course, never joining NATO, especially the first two there. If Ukraine and the United States have backed off those now, and those have been fundamental Russian demands, do you see this being something Russia could agree to?
Well, this is the crux of it. Look, the crux of this agreement, there's really two pieces. There's the map in eastern Ukraine. You have to draw the line on the map, and Ukraine will have to make some compromises there. And they can do so if the other part of the core crux of the agreement, the security guarantees, are robust enough that they have confidence that the war is not just going to start again in a few years. Those are the two key elements. The problem with the plan that came out earlier this weekend, the 28 points, it was so lopsided on the territorial concessions to Russia, basically telling Ukraine to give up territory that Russia's going to have a very hard time taking militarily. And the security guarantees, while strong, the key element to a security guarantee, John, is not just what's on paper, but having allied forces in your country to train, to be present. And that was taken off the table in addition to the limitations on Ukraine's own military structure. Those are the two key elements. But you nailed it. You can tilt now more in Ukraine's favor, and then the Russians are going to balk. That's what diplomacy's about. You got to keep trying to get into that. I've said it on your show before, the zone of a possible agreement, the ZOPA. You got to keep working on it. You got to use pressure, all elements of power, to try to get into that ZOPA, into that zone, to stop the war and get into a ceasefire.
Breaking news, a ballistic missile attack is underway as I speak on the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. According to the Ukrainian Air Force right now, ballistic missiles. The attack comes as the White House says President Trump is, quote, hopeful and optimistic that a deal can be struck to end Putin's war in Ukraine. This after a weekend of intense negotiations in Switzerland, which all came on the heels of the Trump administration releasing a 28-point peace plan that was entirely Putin's wish list. Now, when Ukraine didn't accept that plan on its face, Trump went to social media and wrote in part, quote, Ukraine, quote, leadership, end quote, has expressed zero gratitude for our efforts, in caps. Now, of course, this entire situation is not about saying thank you. That trivializes something quite existential. But we do know that thank you may be at the core for Trump.
Thank you for your leadership, for your boldness, for your clarity, for common sense.
Thank you for putting this entire team together.
Thank you for the largest tax cut in American history.
Thank you for the opportunity to work for you. Thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you, President Trump, for your leadership.
Thank you for reclaiming Labor Day for the American people.
Thank you for saving college football.
And since Trump says that this situation in Ukraine is about thank yous and whether leadership has said those words to him, we check to see. Has Zelensky said thank you?
За ту підтримку, яка сьогодні є в нас.
I'm grateful to the U.S. for their support.
So what can I say to American people in English? My English is poor. To say all my messages and all my thanks to you.
Thank you for your personal efforts to stop this war just now, Mr. President. Many thanks to your wife.
I thank every American family.
I was always very thankful.
Even Republicans are pointing out how far off base Trump is on this. Republican Congressman Don Bacon, one example, posting, quote, the president continues to ignore that it is Russia who invaded Ukraine and bombing cities every night. Putin ordered this invasion. Why the moral confusion? The war started before Trump's first term. I've heard President Zelensky thank America many times for our military aid. And Congressman Bacon is, of course, as we just showed, correct. In fact, our fact-check team went and looked. And Volodymyr Zelensky has said thank you to the United States at least 78 times. Out front now, Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton, who sits on the Armed Services Committee, also a Marine veteran. Congressman, I appreciate your time. This whole obsession with being thanked is, well, it actually appears to matter. Why do you think Trump is so focused on this issue, on being told thank you from Zelensky?
Because it's all about him. For Donald Trump, it's all about him. I mean, never mind that innocent Ukrainian kids are being killed every week in Ukraine. Trump thinks this is about him. We all know that that's who he is.
So your Republican colleague, Don Bacon, I just mentioned him. He posted, why the moral confusion? And, you know, that sort of struck me because the plan that the White House or, well, it's unclear whether Russia had provided it or what went on with that whole thing, right? It's quite confusing, to put it kindly. It was, of course, much of a Putin wish list, right? Even saying NATO wouldn't expand at all. Russia gets back in the G8. Ukraine slashes its military. Putin gets all this territory in Ukraine. My question to you, as we are speaking right now, and we understand that there are ballistic missiles coming down into Kyiv, coming at Kyiv right now as we speak, will Putin honor any legitimate deal?
No, of course he won't. I mean, any deal that depends on Putin's promises is not a deal at all. Any deal that rewards war criminal Putin for his criminal war is not a deal. That does not send the right message to Russia. It's not fair to the Ukrainians, and it certainly doesn't send the right message to any other nation around the world, like China, that might want to start a war of aggression. So we need to be very clear. I mean, the 28-point plan, it's pretty obvious. If something looks Russian, sounds Russian, and serves Russian interests, it's obviously engineered by the Russians. Now, the question is, what is the final deal? And I think one of the things that we have to be sure is that Congress remains united. People like Don Bacon on the Republican side, aligned with me on the Democratic side, that we will not accept a deal that's good for Russia.